Hey everyone. So I wanted to give you a quick tour, or maybe not so quick, we'll see, on the application I built, Camati. And the idea here will be to, instead of recreating the app and writing it all over again, I just want to go through the things I did and explain what happened, basically. So the first thing to notice is I actually used Nuxt as the base for the application. So it is a Nuxt app, in the end a Vue application, but you can tell that when you create the app, you get all sorts of defaults and all the starter files that you need to see your application. Then I wanted to go ahead and try to use the application on my cell phone while developing to be able to test what I was doing, basically. So this is how I did it. I put this configuration on the package.json in order for me to be able to load the application running from the development server. Then I think I changed stuff for Vitor because I was having some issues with the linting and the formatting and things like that. So I changed those things over here. I removed stuff that was part of the starter, then created a general layout for how I wanted the application to look like. So you can see I removed everything that was part of the already created Vuetify application and changed it to be a different thing. So here's the initial layout. This is how it looked at that time. Okay, so next I started trying to split the components as best as I could. So if I bring in the application over here, you can see I kind of tried to visualize what would my splitting of components would be, right? So I started by creating the current timer, which would be like this part over here, as well as the recordings list, which will be the box down below. And all those things changed on the index. So Nuxt will give you page routing, I guess it's called, where particular files that you save on your pages folder will serve as the routes. In this particular case, the application only has one route and there's no need to add more stuff on top of that. So that means we only have this the changes on index. But eventually, if I wanted to add like an admin or something where we can see the recordings without having to go into Firebase or wherever the audio files are stored, we could probably add a new page and do stuff like that, right? So let me change the layout real quick. At this point, I realized I could probably leverage the GitHub projects tab and start creating issues to track the modifications I did to the application. So you'll see that I started creating branches and that we have particular commits attached to different issues. And I explained that in the other video. But you can tell that this is kind of how my brain worked at the time. So continuing on the layout, I added a recordings list component and worked on that a little bit. The index is ever changing because I'm changing the stuff that is feeding into the components. So these were static data that I was using to kind of see different states for the different items in the list. Then I also have stuff to control the timer. So at this point, I already had some idea and something working. More cleaning up, and let's try and move somewhere interesting. So before I got here, I already created another application where I was attempting to just record from the browser with no frameworks, nothing else, just trying to learn the API for get user media and trying to do stuff on my own. But I came across this library, WebAudioRecorder, where you can not only record the audio, but also encode it into an MP3, which was one of my goals. So not quite a feature request, but a goal of mine was to have the audio file recorded as MP3 on Firebase, or wherever I wanted to put that file after you recorded it in the application. So the idea then came to install the npm package for the library, which did not work in the end, but I'll tell you about that later on. There was also, my idea was to develop locally instead of having to deploy every time or have an HTTPS server that I could ping. So I investigated a little bit and came across this idea of creating your own keys and certificates for your secure server. So I did this and started working on it, and it did work, and I could, as far as I remember, I could work with the application running locally and then accessing it on my cell phone on the network. So I think this worked for a little bit, but it was kind of tiring because every time I needed to upload this to the Netlify deployment, I had to remove these configurations. So this kind of became old real quick. So yeah, I realized that over here that I would be making a mess on the Netlify server if I did this every time. So I was, removing and adding these lines of code every time, which was not the way to go. I merged my own pull requests, which was kind of funny, but this is how it went most of the time. So now that I had more ideas of how to split the components, I started creating this recording item as part of this recordings list, passing in data in between the list, kind of like the parent and the children components or children instances of recording item. And then we have, again, more changes on the main page, so on index. Let's see. Okay, so here's the local download. Once you record your item or your audio, you're able to download it. And this wasn't that bad, I don't think. So this is more or less the progress. You can tell I created branches. Then some of the branches didn't go through too far. I tried different things. I tried, even here you can see I tried adding Express and adding an API to store the files. At this point I think I wanted to do it on my own, but then realized I really wanted to have the application to be accessible to users as quickly as I could. So this meant that I could probably go another route and find something else, another way to do that. You can tell I actually started adding MongoDB and doing all those kinds of things. I actually created a Lambda function for Netlify, and that was fun because I learned a little bit of that too. I was able to make it run. I actually asked a couple questions on the forums, I believe, to make this work. And this actually worked, but I realized it would take me even more time to actually get it to store my file and do what I wanted, because I didn't know, and I still don't know, how to store the actual file on MongoDB. So this was kind of what stopped me from going this route. And I realized that I probably wanted to store the file in like an S3 or a similar thing. And then the idea occurred to me that Firebase also provided the service to store files. So I came back and started over, basically. So you can tell here that I started using Firebase and their storing service of files. This is similar to S3 or something like that. Yeah, you can tell this is still a thing by this point. But then now I have the Firebase part going on, right? Some more dumb stuff I did. Okay, and yeah, couple of little details here and there. I really wanted this to be a good user experience. So I was very, very careful of the little interactions that you had. And I still don't think that I have everything covered, but as far as I can tell, the UX should be kind of in a good level by this point. So yeah, I'm referring to preventing the button from being available or adding the progress bar. I think this was actually a change I made because someone who tested my app pointed out that they clicked on the thing and didn't know what was going on. So yeah, I did know I wanted to add the confirmation model, or like an alert or something that would tell the user the file was sent properly. But the progress bar, I think I implemented that because of the comment of my user. All right, so at this point, Firebase was implemented and it worked and it seemed to be fine. So I kept going. So I kept working on the layout, and then I also started working on the branding. You can see logo SVG. This is my attempt to create the logo. So this part over here was created on Inkscape, and I really love that application. We can talk about that later. But yeah, this was at a point that I knew it was working. I knew the flow was kind of like almost there. So I wanted to have a little bit of fun, still work on the project, but have kind of like a relaxed moment for working on it and not feel like I was actually working on the thing. So I created the logo during that time. And yeah, it was very fun. So you can tell I also went ahead and created not only the logo itself, but versions of it that I could use as favicons, or yeah, I think those are called favicons, and different versions and sizes and things like that. I think I used a particular website or web app, I guess, for creating these. Didn't create those by hand. If I can find the link again, I'll post it on the description for the video. Okay, here's the snack bar confirmation, the model or whatever thing that appears over here whenever you sent the recording, and more little things here and there. Issues with the components themselves from Beautify that I didn't take care of properly. And like I mentioned, I wanted to do smooth transitions and have a good user experience for whomever used the application. So I tried my best to deliver that. More refactoring because why not? We do this a lot in all of our applications, right? We refactor the code, we change things once and again and over until it actually works. So at this point, I have a good friend from the company I work on, and he is an awesome QA engineer. And I asked him for a little bit of help with, finding the bugs in the application, the workflow overall. And he was on board. So he helped me find stuff, and I actually worked on that a little bit too. He actually found something interesting, a potential memory leak that we would have because of how we were recording and not sharing the instance of the recorder. But then, so what he did was he recorded over and over again until, I don't know, the 30th time or something. So he would record the message, and then when 3 messages were full here, then he would remove and add another and another and another until he reached the 30th, and that would basically break the application. So we didn't really think that the users would do such a thing, but this is why I really like working with him, because he's very thorough, and it's something that we should probably do in our work all the time. But yeah, moving on, I tried, I think, a couple attempts at fixing that. I think we finally did it. Hopefully you won't try to break the application, but if you do, let me know if the issue is still there. Okay, so more on splitting the components. This is like an ongoing thing, as I am still trying to wrap my head around how would be the best idea, the best way to split them and have nice and isolated components that do only one thing and that they do it right. So more issues, that refresh was not working. I actually thought, and I'm not quite sure I remember well, probably had to modify the library itself a little bit, web audio library that I used. I actually also worked a little bit on the GitHub side of things where I created this template for bugs. I think this is the default one, but maybe I changed it a little bit. So I did this through the GitHub UI, and you can do that. I'll show you later on if interested how you can do that. All right, moving on. So GitHub again, more fixes, and then we move on to Safari. So once my friend helped me with the testing, we also asked a few selected users to help us test the application and find whatever issue they could. So this particular case was a bug in Safari where this looked like an issue for Safari where only the first audio was recorded, and then it would break, basically, wouldn't record anything else. So I tried a couple times. As far as I can remember, we did fix it at the end of the day, but we're not very comfortable with saying that we support it. So yeah. I also learned how to create the tags on GitHub. I think I did that there. I never added these manually because on my work there's an automation part that does this and creates the tags for merges into the main branch. Okay. All right. Finally, since I was more comfortable with the state of the application, I actually added a model dialog with video that explains what the application is and how to use it, just in case it's not super intuitive for users. So I created a video, posted on YouTube as a private video, and then linked that here using this YouTube Embed Lite component. This is very nice because YouTube Embed Lite will do a strip of everything that's not actually needed to embed your YouTube videos, thus making it very light, and your application will be favored with that because you're not loading all those external things on top of your already probably heavy code. So yeah, you should probably check that out, YouTube Embed Lite. This was, I think, inspired by Paul Irish, who is one of my heroes for web development. But yeah, so I think that is it for kind of like the history or how I built the application.